The arrival of the Underdog. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The air, thick with tension, carried the weight of a single absurd report. A human ship has entered restricted space, the messenger repeated. There was a pause before the laughter began. Deep, amused chuckles echoed across the grand hall. The Council, a collection of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful species, found the idea ridiculous. Humans, scoffed High Chancellor Vorkesh, a reptilian warlord whose fleet had crushed civilizations before they could even dream of resistance. They have barely left their own star system. What makes them think they can enter our space? They must be lost, a three-eyed diplomat said, shaking his massive head. Send a warning. Tell them to turn back before they are destroyed. At the center of the room, Admiral Sifos of the Cell-Airy Navy watched the transmission screen. His insectoid fingers drummed against the cold metal table. Unlike the others, he was not laughing. The Dauntless, a single human warship, had appeared near the outer rim of Council territory. No escort, no backup, just one lone ship. It was a foolish mistake. Any sane captain would surrender immediately when faced with the might of the Galactic Order. Yet when the order was sent, the response was not what anyone expected. A human voice, calm and unwavering, came through the transmission. No. Silence fell over the Council. The laughter stopped. Admiral Sifos narrowed his eyes. Repeat that, he ordered. The transmission played again. Same voice. Same confidence. No. The response was not just defiance. It was certainty. This is a mistake, a Carthari noble muttered. Surely they don't mean to fight. Their ship is weak. It cannot match even a single one of our cruisers. Then destroy them, Vorkesh said, his voice a low growl. Make an example of them. A fleet of 12 Council warships was dispatched at once. It was overkill. A single ship could have done the job. But the Council wanted to send a message. No one defied the Galactic Order. The first confrontation. From the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Elias Carter watched the incoming fleet on his holographic display. His crew sat at their stations, waiting for orders. 12 ships, his first officer, Lieutenant Sora Hayes, said. They really don't like us being here. Carter smirked. Good. That means they're taking us seriously. The enemy ships spread into formation, blocking all escape routes. Their weapons charge. A message came through from the lead warship. Unidentified human vessel. This is your last warning. Power down your engines and surrender immediately. Carter leaned forward. His expression was calm, but his eyes held an edge. Transmit my response, he said. A moment later, his voice echoed through the enemy's comms. We are not here to surrender. A pause. The enemy hesitated. Carter could almost hear their confusion through the silence. Then, the enemy ships opened fire. The first shots. Blinding energy beams streaked toward the Dauntless. The crew braced for impact. But the ship did not move like a normal warship. The Dauntless twisted and rolled through space with impossible agility, dodging every shot by mere inches. It was not the speed that shocked the enemy. It was the precision. The Council fleet adjusted, trying to predict the Dauntless's movements. But every time they fired, the human ship was already somewhere else. Inside the Council's war room, Admiral Sifos watched the battle unfold. His mandibles twitched in frustration. That's not possible, he muttered. The Dauntless was moving like it knew where the shots would land before they were even fired. How are they doing this? A tactical officer asked. Sifos didn't answer. Instead, he studied the human ship, a sinking feeling forming in his chest. This was no ordinary vessel. The response. On the Dauntless, Carter remained calm. Charge the railguns, he ordered. Lieutenant Hayes hesitated. Sir, even if we hit them, those ships have stronger shields. Our weapons won't do much damage. Carter smiled. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to send a message. The Dauntless's weapons locked onto a single enemy cruiser. It was not the largest ship, nor the weakest. It was the commander's ship, the one issuing orders. Carter took a breath. Fire. A railgun shot, moving at near light speed, slammed into the enemy vessel. It punched through the shields as if they were nothing. Sparks exploded across the ship's hull. Alarms blared. A direct hit. The Council fleet panicked. This was not supposed to happen. The human ship was not supposed to be this powerful. For the first time, the Galactic Order hesitated. On board the Dauntless, Carter leaned back in his chair, watching the enemy ships scatter. He opened a channel to the Council fleet. "You wanted a message." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Here it is. Humanity is not afraid of you." Then, in a move that shocked the galaxy, the Dauntless turned and vanished into the void. Not through a wormhole. Not with any known technology. It simply disappeared. The Galactic Order had never seen anything like it before. And they would never forget the day a single human ship defied them all. A warning ignored. The Galactic Council chamber was no longer filled with laughter. The air, once thick with arrogance, now carried something else. Unease. Admiral Siphos replayed the footage again. The human ship, Dauntless, had evaded an entire fleet with unnatural precision. And then it had vanished. Not destroyed. Not captured. Simply gone. "This cannot be," growled High Chancellor Vorkesh, his reptilian tail twitching in frustration. "No species moves like that. No ship vanishes without trace. They must have used unknown technology," muttered a auxiliary scientist, her chitinous fingers tapping against the console, perhaps an advanced cloaking field. "No." Siphos spoke for the first time. His mandibles clicked as he leaned forward. "Cloaking does not explain the movement. They dodged our weapons as if they knew exactly when and where we would fire. This is something else." The council members exchanged nervous glances. The Galactic Order had existed for millennia. It had seen empires rise and fall, species wiped from existence. No single ship had ever defied them. And yet, here they were. "We must act," Vorkesh snarled. "Deploy a second fleet, twice the firepower. We will crush them before this becomes problem." Siphos did not argue. He had a sinking feeling that this problem was already beyond control. The hunt for the Dauntless had begun. The pursuit begins. Across the stars, the Dauntless was already on the move. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge, hands behind his back, watching the swirling hyperspace tunnel ahead. His crew worked in silence, but the tension was there. "They'll come after us," Lieutenant Sora Hayes said, leaning against the console beside him. "We humiliated them. The Order doesn't let things like that go." Carter smirked. "Good. That means they're scared." Hayes crossed her arms. "Are we scared?" Carter turned to his crew. Engineers, pilots, tacticians, every single one of them had signed up knowing this mission could be their last. And yet, none of them showed fear. He smiled. "No," he said simply. A ping from the radar console made them all turn. "Contact," called Ensign Malik. His fingers danced over the controls. Long-range sensors just picked up movement. Multiple ships exiting hyperspace. "How many?" Carter asked. Malik swallowed. "At least 20. More incoming." The bridge went quiet. The Dauntless was good, but 20 ships. That was no simple engagement. That was a full-scale hunt. Carter exhaled. "All right," he said, voice steady. "Let's give them a chase they'll never forget." The trap is set. Near the gas giant Velka 7, the second Council fleet arrived in force. 20 ships, all armed to the teeth. Their goal was simple: corner the Dauntless, disable it, and drag the humans back in chains. Admiral Siphos sat in his command chair aboard the warship Imperator. He had reviewed every possible strategy, calculated every outcome. There was no way a single human ship could escape this time. All units spread into formation, he ordered. Block every exit vector. Prepare gravity locks to disable their warp drive. The fleet moved with perfect precision, locking down the system. A silent countdown began. And then, a blip on the scanners. A single ship appearing at the edge of the system. The Dauntless has arrived, an officer reported. Sifos leaned forward. Let's see what you do now, human. The chase. The Dauntless dropped out of hyperspace smoothly. Before anyone could react, its engines flared, sending it into a rapid spin through the gas giant's atmosphere. The Council ships moved in pursuit. This time, there is nowhere to run, Sifos murmured. Disable their engines. Beams of energy lanced through the stormy clouds, chasing the lone human vessel. The Dauntless dodged and weaved, moving through the thick gas clouds, vanishing and reappearing like a ghost. They're trying to hide in the atmosphere, one of Sifos' officers reported. Foolish, Sifos said. We have tracking sensors for a reason. The fleet adjusted, weapons locking on. And then, without warning, the Dauntless changed direction. Not just a simple maneuver, a full reverse burn that sent it hurtling straight toward the Lee battleship at impossible speed. What? An officer gasped. The Dauntless shot past the enemy ship, grazing its shields. Plasma cannons fired, but missed. Not because the Dauntless was too fast, because it knew exactly when to move. Sifos clenched his fists. Impossible. The warning. On the Dauntless's bridge, Carter smirked. They're confused. They should be, Hayes muttered. Even I don't know how we pulled that off. Carter chuckled. Keep watching. He opened a direct transmission to the enemy fleet. Admiral Sifos' face appeared on the holographic screen, his mandibles twitching in fury. Human, he growled. Your ship is surrounded. You have no chance. Surrender. Carter tilted his head. You sure about that? Sifos narrowed his eyes. This game ends here. Carter exhaled, his smirk fading. He leaned closer to the screen. You don't understand, Admiral, he said, voice calm but firm. We are not here to fight you. Sifos blinked. Then why? We're here to warn you. A chill ran through the Council officers. Carter continued. Your entire empire, the order you built, it's based on the idea that you are untouchable, that no one can challenge you. He paused. But today, one human ship has defied you. Silence. Carter's voice dropped lower. And if one ship can do this, imagine what happens when the rest of humanity arrives. The transmission cut. And at that moment, Sifos understood something terrifying. The war had already begun. The impossible escape. The Galactic Order did not make mistakes. For 10,000 years, they had ruled the stars with absolute authority. Rebellions were crushed before they could begin. Uprisings were silenced before they could find a voice. The Order's power was unquestioned, its fleets invincible. And yet, a single human ship, just one, had done the impossible. It had defied them. Now 20 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy were hunting it down. And they were failing. The hunt tightens. Admiral Sifos clenched his mandibles, his compound eyes locked onto the sensor display. The Dauntless was still within the Velka 7 system, darting through the gas giant's stormy atmosphere. We have them, his tactical officer declared. They have no escape routes left. Close the net, Sifos ordered. All ships, advance. Block every exit vector. Disable their warp drive and fire at will. The fleet moved like a precision weapon, cutting off every possible escape. The Dauntless was trapped between the gravity well of the gas giant and the warships above. Engage gravity locks. Massive energy pulses rippled through space, disrupting local space-time. If the humans had any hope of jumping to hyperspace, it was gone now. There, an officer pointed at the screen. They're trying to maneuver around the upper atmosphere. Sifos grinned. Foolish. His claws tightened into a fist. All ships, open fire. Blazing lances of energy rained down on the Dauntless. Missiles screamed through the void, locking onto the human ship. The firepower unleashed was enough to vaporize a city. There was no way to dodge, no way to survive. And yet, the ship was gone. The impossible move. Aboard the Dauntless, the crew held their breath as the sensors went wild. The enemy weapons had just missed. Not by luck, not by speed, but by something else entirely. "We moved before they fired," Lieutenant Sora Hayes whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Captain Elias Carter didn't smile. He simply nodded. "Execute the next sequence," he said. The ship twisted in a way no physics should allow, cutting through the thin upper atmosphere like a blade through water. Plasma fire scorched the air behind them, but not a single shot landed. "They're confused," Hayes muttered, her fingers flying across her console. "They don't know how we're predicting them." "They will soon," Carter said. For now, the enemy was panicking, adjusting their aim, overcompensating. That gave the Dauntless seconds, precious, priceless seconds. And in this battle, seconds were everything. "Admiral, the human ship is still moving," a auxiliary officer reported. "We can't lock onto it. Every time we predict its course, it changes." Cephos growled. "Impossible. No ship can react that fast. Unless—" A cold realization crept into his mind. "They're not reacting," he whispered. "They're predicting." The secret revealed. The Dauntless was not the most powerful ship in the galaxy. It did not have the largest cannons, the thickest shields, or the fastest engines. What it did have was something far deadlier. The ship's AI, codenamed Prometheus, was unlike anything the Galactic Order had ever encountered. It did not just process enemy movements. It predicted them. Every shot fired, every ship repositioned, every tactical maneuver. Prometheus ran thousands of possible futures per second, calculating exactly what the enemy would do before they even knew it themselves. For the Order, combat was about reaction. For the Dauntless, combat was about pre-action. And that difference changed everything. The illusion of victory. "Human ship is breaking toward the outer ring," an officer shouted. Cephos slammed his fist onto the console. "Redirect all units. Do not let them escape." The warship surged forward, closing in on the Dauntless. They locked onto its coordinates, weapons primed to fire. And then the ship vanished again. A second passed. Then two. The sensors scrambled, trying to locate it. Then, behind us, someone screamed. The Dauntless had reappeared directly behind the command ship, its weapons locked on the fleet's nerve center. For the first time in galactic history, an enemy ship had maneuvered behind an entire fleet undetected. Cephos's mandibles twitched. "This is not possible." Captain Carter's voice echoed through the comms, steady and cold. "Admiral, your move." Cephos froze. His entire fleet was aimed at empty space. The Dauntless had outmaneuvered them completely. One precise shot from the human ship, and the fleet's command vessel would be destroyed. Silence fell over the bridge. For the first time in his life, Cephos felt something alien, something he had never experienced before. Fear. The great escape. And then, the Dauntless did something even more impossible. It did not fire. It did not destroy the fleet. It simply left. Engines flaring, it accelerated toward the edge of the system. Before the Order could react, a rift of blue energy formed around it. The Dauntless shimmered and disappeared. Gone. No trace. No warp signature. No signal. As if it had never been there. The fleet remained motionless, the weight of their failure pressing down on them. Cephos stared at the empty void where the human ship had been. His claws dug into the metal of his chair. This was no ordinary enemy. This was something new. Something dangerous. Something the Galactic Order was not prepared for. He turned to his officers, voice cold and sharp. "Tell the Council," he said. "Humanity is no longer a minor species. They are a threat. The Galactic Council had never faced a crisis like this. They had ruled for 10,000 years, their power unshaken, their control absolute. Every species under their dominion had learned to obey, or had been erased from history. And yet, a single human ship had defied them. It had outmaneuvered an entire fleet. It had predicted their moves before they even made them. And worst of all, it had escaped. Now, in the heart of the Galactic Council chambers, the most powerful leaders in the known universe had gathered. Every species was represented: reptilian Vorkesh, insectoid Celery, amphibious Dralquiri, and a dozen others. At the center of the room stood Admiral Sifos, his mandibles twitching with frustration. "You failed," hissed High Chancellor Vorkesh, his scaled fingers digging into the armrest of his throne. 20 warships, and yet you could not capture a single human vessel. Sifos forced himself to remain calm. The Dauntless did not win through superior firepower or speed. It won through something we have never seen before. The chamber filled with murmurs. The council did not like unknowns. Sifos continued, his voice cold and firm. Their ship, its AI, was able to predict our every move. It anticipated our attacks before we even gave the orders. That is why we failed. More whispers, fear creeping into their voices. The Dralquiri ambassador, a pale blue-skinned creature with wide black eyes, leaned forward. Are you suggesting that humans have developed a technology beyond our understanding? Yes. The room went silent. Then the High Chancellor spoke, his voice like a blade. Then we have only one choice. He turned to the council. We must eliminate humanity before it becomes a true threat. The debate of desperation. A Celery general clicked his mandibles in agreement. Yes, we should dispatch an armada to their homeworld immediately. Crush them before they develop more of this prediction technology. Agreed, muttered a reptilian admiral. We cannot allow them to spread. But not everyone in the chamber agreed. Ambassador Tylus of the Sorvani, a race known for their diplomacy, raised a hand. This course of action is dangerous. The council turned toward him. Tylus continued, his voice measured. Think. The humans are already demonstrating abilities beyond our comprehension. What if we attack, and they reveal even greater capabilities? A heavy silence followed. The Order had always been the dominant force in the galaxy. But what if they weren't anymore? Tylus narrowed his eyes. We have always crushed our enemies through superiority. But what if, for the first time, we are not superior? The words hung in the air like a curse. The shadows of fear. Sifos, still standing at the center of the chamber, took a deep breath. The real question, he said slowly, is this: how far have humans truly advanced? A Celery scientist, one of the most brilliant minds in the galaxy, stepped forward. We have intercepted human transmissions. Their technology should be inferior to ours. Their fleets are small. Their colonies are limited. She hesitated. But what? The High Chancellor demanded. The scientist hesitated, as if afraid to say the next words. We do not know the full extent of their AI advancements. If the Dauntless is a prototype, there could be hundreds more like it. A ripple of unease passed through the council. The High Chancellor exhaled. Then we cannot wait. He turned to Sifos. You will lead an invasion force to the human homeworld. No diplomacy. No warnings. We strike fast, and we strike hard. Humanity must be eradicated before they grow stronger. Sifos bowed his head. It will be done. The council had made its decision. The war against humanity had officially begun. The warning delivered. Far from the Galactic Council chambers, the Dauntless raced through the void. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge, watching the swirling blue of hyperspace outside the window. His crew was silent, waiting. They all knew what was coming next. Sora Hayes, his second in command, finally spoke. They'll retaliate. Carter nodded. Of course. They'll send an armada. Of course. She turned to him. So what do we do? He looked at her, his eyes filled with something fierce. We warn Earth. A ripple of energy flickered through the ship's hull as they approached their destination, Luna Base, the hidden human outpost near Earth's moon. No alien empire knew about it. No spies had infiltrated it. It was the beating heart of humanity's true military research. And now, it was the only place that could prepare for what was coming. The Dauntless dropped out of hyperspace. Luna Base came into view, its steel towers glimmering under the pale light of the moon. Carter exhaled. "The war is coming," he murmured. "And this time, we're ready for them." Luna Base was the beating heart of humanity's true power. Officially, Earth was a minor world in the Galactic Order, a species with limited technology, a small fleet, and no real military strength. That was what the Council believed. That was what they wanted the galaxy to believe. But deep beneath the cold, lifeless surface of the moon, hidden beneath layers of reinforced alloy and stealth technology, was a secret known only to a few. Humanity had never been weak. They had simply been waiting. And now, the time for waiting was over. The Dauntless returns. As the Dauntless dropped out of hyperspace, alarms across Luna Base flared to life. Unknown vessel detected. Cancel alert, a calm voice interrupted. Inside the control center, a tall, dark-skinned woman stood with her arms crossed, watching the incoming ship through the reinforced observation window. Her uniform bore the insignia of Project Orion, the most classified military initiative in human history. She was Admiral Sarah Varian, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. Her eyes narrowed. The Dauntless wasn't scheduled to return. Something was wrong. The moment the ship docked, Captain Elias Carter and Lieutenant Sora Hayes stepped onto the platform, their faces grim. Varian wasted no time. "Report." Carter's voice was steady, but his words carried weight. "The Galactic Order knows." Silence. Varian's jaw tightened. "Explain." "They saw what Prometheus could do," Hayes added. "They know we're more advanced than we let on. And now they're coming." The Council voted for immediate invasion. The room felt colder. Varian exhaled sharply, turning to the nearest officer. "How long do we have?" The answer came almost immediately. "Galactic fleets move slow, but they won't take chances this time. Estimated time to arrival: 6 weeks. Only 6 weeks before the full might of the Order descended upon Earth. The secret weapon." Varian didn't hesitate. "Initiate Project Revenant." Gasps echoed across the room. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Project Revenant was humanity's most dangerous secret. Hayes swallowed. "Ma'am, are we sure?" Varian's gaze was cold and unyielding. "We always knew this day would come." Then, without another word, she walked toward the reinforced security door at the far end of the command center. Carter and Hayes followed. Beyond the door was an elevator, one that only a handful of people in human history had ever used. As it descended, the temperature dropped. The air grew heavy. Then the doors slid open, revealing a sight that had been hidden from the galaxy for decades. A fleet. Hundreds of ships suspended in darkness. Not old Terran models, not outdated warships. These were something else entirely. Sleek, angular hulls. Stealth coatings that absorbed every known sensor signature. Advanced energy shielding. Faster-than-light capabilities that outmatched anything in the Order's arsenal. And at the center of the fleet, a single behemoth twice the size of any Galactic Order battleship. Its name was painted in bold letters across the hull. "ASS Vengeance." Carter let out a slow breath. So the stories were true. Varian nodded. For years, the Council thought Earth was weak. They believed our fleets were outdated, our technology primitive. She gestured to the massive shipyard. "That's because we let them believe it." Hayes was still staring at the ships. "This changes everything." Varian turned toward her. "No, Lieutenant." She stepped forward, her voice steely. "This was always the plan. The choice of humanity. For years, Earth had hidden its true capabilities. Every ship they sent into space was carefully underpowered. Every technology they revealed was 10 years behind what they actually had. Every diplomatic effort was meant to reinforce the illusion of weakness. Because humans knew something that the Galactic Order had never understood. The strong are feared. The weak are ignored. And humans had never wanted to be feared. Not until they were ready. Now that time had come. Carter turned to Varian. So what's the plan? Varian's expression was unreadable. The Order will send everything they have to crush us. But they won't be expecting a fight. They'll expect a slaughter. She smiled, a cold, ruthless smile. They have no idea what's waiting for them. Hayes hesitated. So, do we destroy them all? Varian was silent for a long moment. Then she said, No. Both officers blinked. No. We're not going to stop their invasion, Varian clarified. We're going to let them land. Carter stiffened. You're letting them get that close? Yes. Varian turned back toward the shipyard, staring at the Vengeance. Because once they're here, we won't just win the war. She exhaled. We'll end the Galactic Order forever. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Order had ruled with an iron grip. They had crushed rebellions, wiped out species, and maintained their dominance through sheer force. They had never known fear. Until now. Earth was supposed to be a minor world, a weak planet with primitive technology. The Council had believed their own lie. Now, they were coming. An invasion fleet of 500 warships, the largest armada ever assembled. Their mission? To erase humanity from existence before it became a true threat. But what they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. This wasn't a war of survival anymore. It was a trap. The invasion begins. The galactic fleet emerged from hyperspace just beyond the orbit of Mars. Massive dreadnoughts, sleek battlecruisers, swarms of fighter squadrons. A display of power meant to overwhelm and terrify. Admiral Cephos stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, mandibles twitching in satisfaction. This will be over quickly, he muttered. He expected a desperate response. A weak resistance, maybe a few human warships foolish enough to stand their ground. Instead, nothing. Mars was silent. Earth's orbital defenses were dark. No transmissions, no alarms, no panic, just silence. Cephos frowned. Something felt wrong. Then, a sensor officer spoke. Sir, there's an energy reading near the moon. Cephos turned sharply. What kind of reading? The officer hesitated. It's massive. And then, the trap was sprung. The illusion of weakness. Across the dark side of the moon, stealth barriers dropped. The truth was revealed. Humanity's hidden fleet. Hundreds of warships, sleek and angular, built with technology the Order had never seen. Ships designed not just to fight, but to hunt. And at the center, a behemoth, twice the size of the largest galactic dreadnought. The HSS Vengeance. Admiral Cephos' mandibles clicked in shock. Impossible. Then, humanity spoke. Admiral Sarah Varian's voice rang through every galactic communication channel. Welcome to Sol. You are trespassing in human space. A pause. You have two options, retreat now and live, or stay and be erased. Silence fell over the galactic fleet. Cephos snarled. She's bluffing. They cannot stand against us. But then, something happened that changed everything. The human fleet moved. The Predator strikes. The first attack came before the Galactic Order could react. A dozen human warships vanished, not cloaked, not hidden, but something far worse. Their hulls bent light. Their engines emitted no detectable signals. Then, out of nowhere, boom. A galactic cruiser exploded, torn apart by invisible weapons fire. Another followed, then another. Chaos erupted in the galactic fleet. Officers shouted orders, sensors failed to lock onto targets, dreadnoughts fired blindly into the void. And then the Vengeance moved. Unlike anything the Order had ever encountered, it didn't fire first. It waited. It watched. It analyzed. Then, when the enemy's pattern was clear, it struck with terrifying precision. A single broadside from the Vengeance reduced 3 galactic warships to molten debris in seconds. The Order was no longer fighting a rebellion. They were being hunted. The false retreat. Admiral Siphos gritted his mandibles. He had made a terrible mistake. "This is not a battle," he muttered. "This is an execution." Desperation took over. He ordered a full retreat. Galactic ships turned, activating hyperspace drives. But nothing happened. Siphos' heart froze. "What?" A human voice crackled through the comms. "You're not leaving." It was Elias Carter, captain of the Dauntless. "Our scientists cracked your FTL frequencies years ago," Carter said. "We can scramble them at will." Siphos' eyes widened in horror. They were trapped. The fall of the Order. The galactic fleet was in disarray. Some ships tried to fight back. Others attempted to send distress calls. None of it mattered. Human warships ripped through their ranks, faster, deadlier, smarter than anything the Order had ever faced. Dreadnoughts were gutted from the inside by human boarding teams, their crews slaughtered before they could react. Fighter squadrons were hacked mid-flight, their controls hijacked, forced to turn on their own fleet. Admiral Varian watched it all from the command deck of the Vengeance. For decades, humanity had hidden its strength. For decades, they had let the Galactic Order believe they were inferior. Now, they would never underestimate humanity again. Siphos, panicked, opened a direct channel. "We surrender," he begged. "The fleet surrenders. Please." Varian's voice was cold. "Surrender? Like the thousands of species your Order has wiped out?" Siphos trembled. We can negotiate. We can." "You don't understand," Varian interrupted. "This isn't a war anymore." She leaned forward. "This is justice." The Vengeance fired its main cannon. The Eternal Dominion, flagship of the Galactic Order, was annihilated in a single shot. Siphos was gone. The entire invasion fleet was reduced to wreckage. The Galactic Order, once unshakable, had just suffered its greatest defeat in history. And humanity had just declared itself a true power in the galaxy. A new galactic era begins. Earth was safe. The Order was broken. But this was just the beginning. Varian turned to Carter and Hayes. "The Council will send more forces when they learn what happened here." Hayes grinned. "Let them." Carter nodded. "They thought they were gods. We just proved they can bleed." Varian's gaze hardened. "No," she said. "We just proved they can die." She turned toward the stars. And humanity prepared for the next war. Because now, the galaxy knew the truth. The age of the Galactic Order was over. The age of humanity had begun. The war was over. The greatest fleet the Galactic Order had ever assembled lay in ruins. Wreckage drifted in high orbit over Mars, the twisted remains of warships that had once been symbols of unbreakable power. Now, they were nothing more than graves. Humanity had won. But victory was just the beginning. Because now, the galaxy was watching. And for the first time in 10,000 years, they were afraid. The Galactic Council's last stand. The news spread faster than light. On the capital world of Sylaxis Prime, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives from 100 species screamed over one another. Some demanded retaliation, others begged for negotiation, and many simply panicked. The most powerful empire in the known universe had just lost to a species they had once called insignificant. Chancellor Varric, the leader of the council, slammed his fist against the podium. "We cannot let this stand," he roared. "Humanity must be brought to heel before they become a true threat." A frail insectoid diplomat chittered nervously. But they just destroyed our largest fleet. Our warships are decades behind their technology." We still outnumber them. Varric snapped. We can rally every world, every fleet, every resource. No. The voice that spoke was old, weary. High Scholar Elvin, one of the few remaining members of the original founders of the Order, slowly stood. The war is lost, he said simply. Varric's eyes burned with fury. You would have us submit. Elvin exhaled. I would have us survive. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The council had ruled for millennia, enforcing their will with absolute power. But today, power belonged to someone else. Varric opened his mouth to argue. Then the entire council chamber shook, a deep, distant rumbling. And then, the sky burned. Humanity's final message. High above Solaxis Prime, a single human warship had arrived. Not a fleet, not an invasion force. Just one ship, the HSS Vengeance. It had jumped directly into orbit, bypassing every defense system, every patrol, every planetary shield. Because nothing the Order had could stop it. From the bridge, Admiral Sarah Varian stood with arms crossed, staring down at the world below. This is Admiral Varian of the Terran Dominion. Her voice echoed across every screen, every communication line, every broadcast in the Council's vast empire. Your fleet is gone. Your invasion has failed. Your order is broken. Silence. Then, she continued, for centuries, you ruled through fear. You crushed civilizations, wiped out entire species, and called it order. She leaned forward. That time is over. Below, on Solaxis Prime, Varric trembled. She's bluffing, he whispered. They wouldn't dare attack the capital. But then, he looked up, and he froze. Because something was descending through the atmosphere. A single object. Small, fast, burning like a comet. It struck the ground just outside the council chamber. A message pod. With shaking hands, Varric approached. The pod hissed open. Inside was a single black flag, marked with silver insignia. A human symbol. A warning. Varian's voice rang out once more. You have one choice. She paused. Surrender now, or be erased. The fall of the Order. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate. Worlds that had once bowed to the Council rose up in rebellion. Slave races, once crushed under the weight of the Order's rule, armed themselves and fought back. Even the Council's own member species turned against them. They had all seen the battle at Mars. They had seen the truth. The Order was not invincible. And now, for the first time in history, they were losing. The dawn of the Terran Dominion. One by one, the Council's worlds surrendered. Some tried to fight. They were crushed. Some tried to flee. They were hunted down. And some, seeing the inevitable, knelt before the new rulers of the galaxy. Within a year, the Galactic Order was no more. Its banners burned. Its fleets dismantled. Its leaders executed. And in its place, a new empire rose. The Terran Dominion. A name that would be remembered for centuries. A name that would reshape the galaxy forever. The final decision. On Earth, inside the new Terran High Command, Admiral Varian stood before a room of leaders. Generals. Scientists. Strategists. The architects of humanity's future. Captain Carter and Lieutenant Hayes stood by her side. We've won, Carter said. The Order is gone. The galaxy is ours. Varian nodded, but her expression was unreadable. Hayes frowned. You don't look happy. Varian exhaled. We have a choice, she said. We can rule as they did, through fear, through power. She looked out the window, where Earth's first true intergalactic fleet was being built. Or, we can be something more. A long silence followed. Then Carter spoke. So what do we do? Varian turned back to them, ice cold, determined. We build, she said. We unite. She stepped forward. And we make sure that no one, ever threatens humanity again.